Hello everyone, welcome to this new tutorial on Java. So today we are going to discuss about this static keyword in Java. How do we use this keyword? What's the use of this keyword and where we can use this keyword? So I'm just going to go with the help of an example, how to use this keyword. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a class here first so that I can just show you with the help of an example. So I'm going to create a class called car. So we just create a class called car, and let's say I want to have just couple of properties in this one. Let's say car could have a color. So and let's say car also has let's say some kind of max speed on the car, and we're just going to put a basic constructor here for this car, and I can just create you can create getter and setters for class. These are just methods to access these properties. So I just created these two methods, nothing fancy. It's just simple plain Java object. So, and we're talking about the static keyword. What do we use the static keyword for? So we can declare a variable here. Let's say we want to call it as a private static. Let's say, and here's an example. Let's say you want to know how many car objects has been created. So in order to do that, we can use this static variable. So the static variables, they really belong to the class. So they belong to the car class. They don't belong to the object actually. So that's the main difference. So it belongs to the car. So what that really means is whatever the value of that static variable, you can access that value from any of the objects. So it's the same value across all the objects. But in case of objects, if when you create a car object, every car object has its own properties. Every car object could have its own color, its own speed. Everything can be different because that's a specific to a car. But for the static variables, when you declare something as a static, it means it belongs to the car and it remains the same for everybody. So let's say I'm going to put this, let's say, number of cars. Yeah. So I make this variable as a static. So what this means? So let's say I want to count how many cars I created. So this means every time I create a new car, I have to increment this variable. And you know that when you create a new car object, you call the constructor. This is a constructor for a car. So we can go here and number of cars, and we can just increment this. Every time somebody creates this, we can increment it. So I'm just going to give we can do quickly example here. Let's say we created this subject car. We just create this car object. So let's say we want to put number of cars equal to, we can say here, and as I mentioned, you can access this variable directly from the car actually, but the thing is we didn't make it public. So you can go either make it public, this variable, if you make it public. So I'm going to show you another method, but let's make it public for now. So if you make it public, and you can say number of cars. So you see, you don't have to really create an object in order to access this number of cars variable because they're static. So you can use that just the class name dot variable. So let's copy one more time. So, and I want to call this car1 here, and still access the same variable. So what I'm trying to show is now the value should be, see, you create one car here, and the value should be 1. You create another car, should be 2 now actually. So that's it. Yeah. So number of cars 1, 2. Simple enough. So this is one example how you can do this one, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm also going to show you one use case for it. So this was one thing where you use static keyword for declaring a variable of static type, but you can also use static variable to declare a method. So let's say I'm going to declare this method public static. Let's just get number of cars. So we can use this method and I can return this number of cars here. So so what I'm saying is, instead of saying public, I can also say like private. So I said it is a private variable, but now I have a getter method, so I can do the same thing with this method. This method returns me number of cars. So if you notice, now my cars dot number of cars method is broken because this variable is not available because it's private. So what I can do is, instead of this one is, so I have a car, and now if you see, I have access to this method called get number of cars. And another thing you noticed is, this, since this method is a static, I don't have to create an object. I can just call directly on the class. So result should be still same because we didn't change much. So I'm just going to save it. That is gone. You see, number of cars 1, number of cars 2. I mean, I can extend another one just to see it happening here. So I'm just going to call it, let's say, car 3, and it should be just 1 2 3. So we know that this is working. Another thing is, let's say, another use case for this one. So you said get number of cars. Another thing I can do, so this was one way how to get static method, you can return it. But let's say we have there are other ways you can use. Let's say we have a method called public static string company is, let's say we have some company called Ford here. You can also copy this method here just to return that company. So this is static, and instead of string you can say int, you can say get company. See, the company name doesn't really change actually. So but you can also have a setter method actually really. So you can change the name of the company too, and it will change for all the objects. Public static string, well, not string here, so just a void set company, and you can say company equal to, and you have to pass some kind of name here, whatever the name you pass here, so that goes into the company. Whatever reasons, if the company Ford changes its name to something else, you can always change the name from here actually. So that's the, but I'm just trying to show you the static methods. Basically, for static methods you don't need an object to create a static method. So here you can go and let me see, I want to see the name of the company here actually. Let's say we want to put name here somewhere here, in the beginning, company is equal to, and here you can say is get company, and if you run it, just save it, it's Ford. But let's say I want to go down here, I want to say car dot set company, and I want to say new Ford. I'm just trying to, let's say they want to change their names, and if I print it after this one, now it's called new Ford. So you see this, the static variable is tied to the class and is shared across all the objects which you create. Another thing I want to show you is that so right now if you notice, I have this number of cars. There is a concept of called, there's another thing you can do like a static, it's called static block in the code. So you have a class, and within the class you can have this block, and you have to just put it here static, and within this a block with these braces. So let's say number of cars. This static block is executed only once when your class is loaded, only once. Here you can, let's say I want to initialize number of cars. You can do any kind of initialization stuff you want to do here, and here let's say I want to initialize the number of cars to 10. When the class loads for the first time, I want to set number of cars equal to 10. Let's say we already have 10 cars built in or whatever, right? So now what will happen, let me just put here so that we know that we came here, println. So what we can say here is like this, and we say inside static block, so that so now you see I'm going to close it here. Now this static block is initializing this number of cars to 10. So if I go to my main method, so I create 1 2 3, so I should have really number of cars should be 11 12 13 now here. So let's go here, you see. So it went inside static block. So I think this is the very first time when the class load it goes here. So and before it does anything, is the first thing. Then the number of cars is 11, then 12, then 30. So it started from 11 now, actually, if you notice. So that's the purpose of the static block. You can initialize things once in the beginning of this one. Okay, so that was one example. And let's say I don't want to, okay, so this was a constructor here actually, right? So you see, you are trying to, when every time you create a new class, sorry, new object, you increment it here. But what happens if you have, let's say this is one constructor which is no arg, there's no arguments, but you have another one which has arguments. Then you have to also put this variable into that one. Let's say have another constructor here for the car. It takes some, let's say color or something, here. Then you also have to make sure you don't forget to bring it here. So this becomes a problem actually. So what I'm going to do is, when you create an object, I don't want to do it here because that's a little problematic. So this was a static block. It gets executed only once. There's another thing called, you can just simply put a simple block. This is called instance block. So it means every time you create a new instance of this class, instance means create a new object, this block gets executed. So I'm going to say, let me copy it here. Inside it called instance block. So it means every time you go here, it just execute this one. So let's say, so right now we removed from inside this constructor, we removed this number of cars plus plus. Now we put it inside this instance blocks. And remember, static blocks get executed only once, but this instance blocks get executed every time you create a new object. Let's see. Yeah, still same, number of cars 11 because we started with a 10, then 12, 13. So it means we are incrementing, this block is getting called every time. See, inside it says inside instance block, inside instance block, inside instance block. So that was all about how can you use this static variable. You can make a static method. Static methods are mostly used for kind of utility methods, or if you want to do one-off kind of things, and you don't need an object in order to call those static methods. Same thing with the variables. And then you have the static block which you use to initialize the variables. And there's another thing called instance block, and this block gets called every time you create a new object. So I hope you like this video. Please consider to subscribe this channel and like this video. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.